All right, we're ready. Thanks.
Right, yeah, well, I don't know if I'll even use it tonight, but how to just in case. Hi.
How are we doing, Karen?
I'm good.
Okay,
Nice
this
to
is
see you all.
zoning board meeting tonight, July 6, 2017. On my right, we have Allison Antoine, Elliot Hammond, Aaron Wolf, and myself, John Martin, sitting in as acting chair in replacement of Greg Gunder. And as a first matter, we will hear about 126th Street, Main Street, 126 Main Street, and simply just information regarding that project, which is currently before the HRDB board for decision, which is still pending. So go ahead, Karen.
Thank you very much for seeing us tonight. I'm Karen Parks, and I think the owner is coming, but she might have thought we were going to be heard later, so she might appear. That's Sue Cost again. So the project is, as you know, 126 Main Street, Carolyn's Flower Shop, and our proposal right now before the Historic Review Board, and we also have an application into the Planning Board, and now you as well, because it will be a coordinated review. But we are proposing to take down the existing building, which has a number of issues that we've been addressing with the Historic Review Board. And we're getting closer to that decision. I think they're feeling more comfortable having seen the condition of the building and kind of better assessed what historic features are remaining and what's been altered and changed over time. So with that, if we are ultimately allowed to do that, we'll be constructing a new building, and as a result, we'll be before you for a request for either a front yard setback variance or perhaps a special permit. And that's one of the things I wanted to ask you tonight in terms of how the code reads, which that might be, because our proposal would be to bring the building right up to the front property line, and similar to where it is now, although now it sits 6 inches over the property line, so we're going to rectify that with the new building, but bring it right up to the property line so it's in line with the other buildings on the block on Main Street. So this is the, I know you all have the code, but this was the section of the code that reads.
And it's referencing section 134-94 of the zoning code.
Right.
And
so
existing setback. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say the required front yard setback in the B1 district, which is where we are, is 40 feet. And also, I didn't really mention it, but all of our other zoning requirements will be able to meet in terms of side yard, rear yard, coverage, height, parking. So really the only issue before you will be this front yard setback. And the question is, I'm not sure which part of the code we should be actually speaking to you about, whether that that provision which allows buildings to be in line with others on the road is something we should be requesting, or if we should be going for the front yard setback. And so part of the purpose of this meeting would be a little bit of an interpretation. And
Well, what we might do is, you know, we're taking this, everything that you're saying under advisement. We do have a denial letter from the building inspector, so that's why we're even hearing some of this information today.
right.
But when it comes to a workshop, we'll notify you in advance exactly what we're looking for.
Okay.
So there will be another workshop.
Okay.
And anything else you want to add to that? I mean,
No,
when you say
that-
side yard,
We
how is it that, are you
Our
not?
intention is, right now, the building is adjacent to the Silver Spoon, 124 Main Street. They're not physically connected, they're about 6 inches apart, and that's actually one of our main issues with the buildings, is there's been severe water damage over many years because of the gap between the buildings, which hasn't been properly addressed. So our proposal with the new building is to actually separate them, and we have a 5-yard setback requirement, so we actually want to move the building 5 feet away from the Silver Spoon building.
And you have that room to deal with, right?
We do, yeah.
You got the parking lot,
Correct,
right?
right.
So,
And we're able to meet our parking requirements.
do you know the width of the lot?
Yes. Just have to pull out the survey. Hi,
Is this
Sue.
us?
Come on
Oh, I
up.
thought we were at the end of the meeting.
This is Sue Costigan, the owner of the property.
Hi.
Um,
Nice to meet you.
Allison Antoine, John Martin, Elliot Hammond, Aaron Wolf.
So,
Sorry,
No, we did this
of
just to
order.
make
Quick
sure the
switch,
public
okay.
here was in time and just to expedite.
I can enact.
But what we're doing is we're just accepting a little bit of a statement from Karen and yourself with regards to the your project and what you intend. And in the end, there's going to be a workshop where we'll specify matters in advance. But Karen's just asking about issues of special permit and or variance. That'll all be looked at and considered.
so the lot width at the street is 60.79 feet, and it's essentially rectangular, but it does narrow at the very back of the lot to 49.63
Okay.
feet. So, in that packet of information, you have proposed site plans, but if this is kind of a small version of it, which shows the proposed building location. And this is
You're
the,
talking about taking the whole building down?
yes,
Yeah, we do have your packet. It's in there, got locked in.
Okay,
So,
yeah.
but we have most everything else, and we were just going to listen today.
Right.
Uh,
So, if we're allowed to separate the buildings, as you mentioned, we're still going before the Historic Review Board, and now we'll start presenting our plans for the new structure, but they are definitely understanding of the issues we're facing with the proximity of the buildings as they are.
Current proposal, moving it to the north, east. Well, they're actually moving this property here. I think that's proposed in yellow.
Correct.
And the red is in current.
Yes, yeah.
So, all right.
So,
Go ahead.
that's basically a summary of the project.
It's pretty straightforward.
And our main goal in meeting with you today is to present the question of which part of the code we'd actually be.
Right.
as-
We'll look into that.
Okay.
And we have it on record just to what your statement is regarding it.
Great.
And any other questions from the
No,
board?
not right now.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
just to be clear, Karen, you want the building to be in line with Silver Spoon?
Correct,
Okay.
yeah. Give or take, right now, the building sits over the property line by about 6 inches onto the village property. So
Okay.
certainly, we want the new building to sit entirely on Sue's property. We're also proposing to possibly pull it back from the property line a foot to a foot and a half, mainly to be able to get in and out of the building with a potential step, depending on the final grading plan. But we're definitely flexible in that regard. So if it's deemed more appropriate to have it in line with the buildings on Main Street versus
Yeah, that's
step
totally the
back.
HDRB on that matter.
Right,
The idea is they wanted everything flush.
yeah,
but-
yeah. So, and we may end up doing that as long as
Yeah.
we can physically get in and out without having steps on the village property. So that's pretty much it now. And also just to let you know, we have our applications into the planning board as well. We'll see them for the first time next week. And we've submitted the short form EAF to them. We suspect, although we know it's coordinated with you, that they would declare themselves lead agency for the environmental review. And we do know we'll have to submit a long form, but that will provide to whatever board is, serving its
Mhm.
need.
Very good.
Great.
So,
Well, thanks, Karen.
Well, thanks a lot,
Thank you.
Karen.
thank you. So we'll see you probably in a few weeks or next meeting.
Yep.
Great.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Is that
Okay.
what you guys think?
Because these ridiculous
Oh,
chairs.
you did? Thanks.
Okay, the next matter would be the daily resident on 19 Garden Street. And I think we're looking at issues of side yard variances.
I side yard variance, yes.
Okay, I think we will have a packet before us. And we're gonna do everything all over again.
Yeah.
Nothing pre-exists from the prior
Agreed.
application, so you make a new record here
Mhm.
and we base it on that information.
Understood.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
So housekeeping, we did send out the letters after the last workshop. I apologize, I did not get them as specifically return receipt, but I did print out from the USPS the delivery record for all of the
Okay.
pieces. So these are all of the 10 ones we sent out, and then records that they were in fact delivered to their appropriate addresses. As evidence, actually, but we have a bunch of Garden Street neighbors here today, which is nice. So I think we did, I think they reached their intended targets, which is good. So we're here today to talk about a side yard variance for our home in the R1 zoning district. This was, as mentioned, a project that has been sort of long in gestation and had previously, in its exact same form, had previously received this same side yard variance in the past. I understand this is a separate application. However, the application materials and the merits therein are identical. In the packets in front of you, you've got a couple of items. One is a stapled sort of long form sheet that shows sort of the breakdown of the plans, both an overall sort of site plan, a breakdown of the sort of the current sort of zoning levels. The third page in is a set of studies to demonstrate sort of the different potential solutions for this particular addition and why some work and some don't work.
And make sure, you know, the public is here to hear
Yep.
the whole project, understands what the plan is.
Oh yeah, I was going to give a quick
That's
let
great.
me give you a
That's
heads up.
great.
I'm going to give you a quick overview,
Good.
and then I'm going to go through page by page what we have.
Wonderful.
And then I'm going to go through step by step of the 5 primary criteria of the approval or denial of the variance itself, and then we'll, I think, open it up for conversation. And then the rest of the deck is sort of the floor plans specifically, and then more on some additional documentation around the specific sizing and massing of the structure itself. You also have a survey, the last survey done. You also have a packet of photographs demonstrating sort of current conditions of not just Garden Street, but a variety of streets in the lower village area.
Very helpful.
Yeah. And so I'll break it right in. So the house in question is 19 Garden Street. The actual address is 19/21 Garden Street, though it's not considered a double lot because the 2 lots were never actually deeded separately, so they've always been a single deed, unlike 15 and 17 Garden Street, which in fact are separate deeds. The house in question was part of is considered sort of part of a 3 building unit that is our house 19 and then 23 and 25 that have sort of that interesting, great sort of gingerbready neo-Victorian sort of cottage look. During a process with the HDRB to explore how a potential expansion could be made, the design that we sort of ended up with, which I think is was worth the process we went through and worth both the extra expense of the process as well as the extra sort of cost of the structure itself. Really fits into the mode and the means and the rhythm of the street itself, which are sort of fundamental components of what the HDRB uses to decide on sort of design appropriateness. Flipping through sort of the 4 main components, and all of these documents will be available for everyone in the room to be able to inspect. The first page gives sort of a quick overview of the lot itself. The variance we're asking for is a side yard variance. Specific as a side yard variance around the cumulative total of the 2 side yards of the buildings themselves. The structure that we're creating goes up to the 7.5 foot mark, which would be a standard small side yard setback.
Is that the southerly border?
That is the southerly border, yeah.
So 7.5, is that inches or 7.5?
7.5 feet. 7.5 feet is
Got
where
it.
the new structure will end. Now, in other circumstances, that would be fine. The reason why we require a side yard variance is that the cumulative total of the side yards, both on the south side and the north side, are under what the minimum would be.
Yes, what is the north side?
The north side, minimum side yard is 1.7 feet.
1.7. 7.
And so the required would be 10, or in the minimum of the side yard, it would be 7.5. So even if it was 7.5 and 7.5 on both the north and south, it should be 15 feet, when in fact it'll end up being, what's that, 9 feet, 9 and 3, 9 feet and change. So we're actually asking for a 6 foot and change variance to accommodate sort of the cumulative total of the two side yards. We're not asking for a variance to encroach upon what would otherwise be the standard side yard on the south side, which would be 7.5 feet. As evidenced by the pictures and the aerial view of Cold Spring document, those, even a 7.5 foot variation of setback is more than normal than for most of the village houses. And even the cumulative total of the 9.5 feet or 9.3 feet is still well within range of the overall character of the lower village, and certainly within the character of Garden Street.
And why would that be?
Why would it be? Just from a photographic evidence standpoint, I mean, why would it be? Is just because the current sort of natural character of the spaces within the houses on Garden Street.
So you reference to the photographic exhibits?
Yeah, I'll reference the photographic exhibits. As we look at Garden Street looking west, these are the houses directly to our south.
Yeah, anything you're showing us, just show to them.
And the houses directly to our north, which is Garden Street looking west. Further houses, Garden Street looking east, which is further down on Garden Street, closer to you guys' end. Also Garden Street looking east, this is headed towards the Main Street side, this particular one. And you'll note in each one of these, the distance, granted, they're not complete panoramics, they're cutoffs where the houses, some of the houses are, and it's been designed to show the specific breaks between the houses. You'll note the consistent, the consistent lack of space between houses. I think it is a natural, and I think both our designers originally and the HGB agreed, and previous iterations of this board agreed, those are natural conditions of village living. And a particular characteristic of the historic, both the state and national and non-historic district components.
So a lot of these, it appears, that the separation between the houses, in many instances, is just about sufficient to run a driveway.
Yes, a lot of them do run driveways, a lot of them don't, and even a lot of them, I'll draw your attention, I mean, granted, most of these variances or most of these separations predate any of the real significant zoning laws.
Right, and I'll say that the public's going to have an opportunity to comment on all this, so if you just want to
Yeah.
hear what we're talking about, you'll have a chance to have input.
I'll take note of a couple of the particular, out of the first two pages that you'll see, which are our immediate houses directly to our south and north. You'll see most of those spaces between the houses actually don't accommodate a driveway. The spaces between, thank you, the spaces between 23 Garden and 25. Spaces between even 1921 Garden and 23.
Would the spacing
13.
between your southerly border proposed, where the addition is going to go, what would then be your distance between that southerly portion of your improvement to the
7.5 feet. To the next
house?
Oh, to the next house? Actually, that's a good question. So the next house is 1517, and that is a double lot, which the 17 is an empty lot. So it actually, to the next house would probably, from edge house to edge house, it would be, I'm going to guess about 25, 20.
And this is just an approximation, and this is where your new
feet.
addition would end, and
Right.
the next house would be.
About 35 feet. But granted, I mean, the property owners at 1517 would have the same rights and privileges to have this conversation with you in the future.
Oh,
as
no
well.
question.
Yeah. And they would need a side yard variance as well, because they have even less side yard between their house and the side next to theirs on their south side. Which I know is a problem when they get a drum set. What else is of interest? So, going further into the full spread documentation, the zoning analysis, which is the second sort of long form page, sort of breaks down the full set of sort of the zoning principles and the zoning regulations around the house, and the only areas in which we are sort of non-conforming or existing non-conforming, and in which there are no particular changes or proposed changes, and where we are looking at changes in the principal building, which is the second set of lines down, 1, 2, 3, the fourth, the
Third line down,
fifth,
side yard.
third, fourth, and fifth line, third, fourth, and fifth line down in terms of minimum side yard north, minimum side yard south, and lots under 60 feet wide minimum shall be reduced.
Just out of curiosity, is this a new set of drawings and proposed construction, is it taking up more of the side yard than the original proposal that you had?
No, it's the identical proposal.
Identical one,
It is pixel for pixel, the same set
Okay.
of drawings.
okay. Just checking to see.
Great. And then talking about in the third set of studies, so one of the conditions of a denial or acceptance is whether or not the variance, or pardon me, how do they describe it? Whether or not the variance was self-created. I think the definition of that, as we look at some of the intent of self-creation, is whether or not you can create other solutions that don't necessarily require a variance. The third page in this document sort of walks through some alternate drawings of what a side space could look like in the building. The first two drawings actually demonstrate what we can do without a side yard variance, but still live within sort of the means of the HDRB in terms of keeping some degree of rhythm with significant buildings. You'll note that the main sort of current building is fully sort of drawn out, and then the buildings to the right of it are neighbors to the north, 25, or probably 23 and 25, and so it's everything to the left of the main sort of fully drawn building would be the extension. You'll see starting in the top left corner how small and sort of narrow the potential structures would be to demonstrate sort of a real lack of usefulness of that type of construction. And then moving to the bottom row, an additional way to get past the variance would be to crowd sort of an additional part of the building directly on top of the current structure.
And move it up front more.
Potentially move it up front, but even if we're moving it up front, the side yard to side yard, it's going to be the same side yard, no matter sort of where we end up. We could have potentially sort of moved it back even further from the side yard side, but it would have created a really sort of crowded condition. So it's this lower right-hand drawing that we ended up on as sort of a success story behind the HDRB at previous ZBA or ZBA meetings, in which the structure of the building is within specific cadence to the other components of sort of the three building set. And it speaks to both the visual sight lines of the height lines, the ceiling lines, and a lot of the waterboarding and other trim and treatments of the building sort of stay in unison.
Can you show, can you hand it?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
The one we're asking for.
This is
the one
you're
This is the one
asking for.
we're proposing, right? And these other ones are alternate paths that could meet current coding variances, but don't pass muster for a variety of reasons, mostly for.
Does this represent the back,
Yeah.
the height?
Yeah,
This is
that's
the
the-
tall,
that's the peak
so
height.
this is what you're proposing is higher.
This is the current peak height of the building, and so we're not actually going above it. We actually will be 6 inches below the current peak height building.
I don't see that though. If this is the current
No,
drawing,
this is the current building.
right?
this is
What's
our
the-
current house.
But what's the one that you're gonna build?
This right here, the extension.
Okay, but so the back peak
Mhm.
is equivalent to the
6
back
inches
peak.
lower.
It doesn't look that here though.
Well, I'll be happy to show you additional.
Are you talking about the horizontal?
I think she's talking about the peak
The
itself.
height of the
Right.
peak of the building.
Right. Is
So-
there a running line, you have the two angular
Mhm.
sections up front, and then is there a running
Yes, there'll be a
sloped roof?
Yes, there'll be a slope roof component.
On the east and west?
Yeah,
Okay.
and that is below the peak of the building, and it is the minimum height required for an attic space. It's also the minimum height required to get the correct pitch to match the pitch of the two other, the two components that'll be connecting, in order for runoff to be acceptable and for it to sort of match the overall aesthetic of not just that building but its neighboring.
And is it all gonna be guttered and everything?
Yes, so the drawings that you look at in front of you do not include the gutters, but the final build out and the final documentation we'll submit to the building department will include full
Right,
gutters.
and you're still under the 30% area covered?
Yes, we are at 25% and change. 30% maximum, 26.5, going from 17.4 to 26.5.
So Chris, in your variance spreadsheet, are the gutters included in the setback?
The gutters are,
Do we normally count gutters for setbacks? No.
I
No,
believe
normally,
they are
no,
not.
as long as there's a certain amount of overhang that's
Only on
permitted.
the
Yeah.
old one, like the last one we had up on,
The Kapoor's house.
The last one. No, that was
On Fishkill?
Fishkill.
Well, because that went right up to the property line.
That
The
was
question was
right.
whether or not you were over the
That's
property
what
line.
they considered that.
Okay,
Yeah, so for the building structure, the foundation of the structure is at 7.6. There is an overhang for both the roof component, a small overhang of, I think, less than 6 inches.
But as
and then
compared to that, it's over your property.
Yes, it's over our
That's
property.
the question,
Well, I
whether
just-
it's over property line, but go
That's
ahead.
correct.
Yeah,
But
the
into
question
the
was-
variance area. Yeah.
my question was to make sure we understood the full, that the
With-
request for the variance was accurate. If we need to include the gutters, but if
Gotcha.
you don't, then it is.
Our understanding of the legalities is that the variance is based on the foundation and footprint of the building.
Right, but there's also a restriction on how far
Okay, sure.
eaves can come off of the
Yeah.
house.
Oh, well, yeah, we don't have any built-in plans for any kind of extended windows or
Right.
sort of window seats or
Okay.
and, anything else here for documentation?
I think we considered that in another property that was the shed. Remember that? Okay, but anyway. go
Yeah,
ahead.
no problem. Yeah, no, I was here for the Fishkill meeting or the Fishkill Road meeting, yeah, like that was the situation where the window seat was going right up to the property line, right?
Right.
So it was a question of whether or not the angle sort of roof line would actually extend to the property. That's, we don't have that problem. That's a different set of problems. So, and then I think the rest of this are, yeah, our sort of further massing and documentation around, this is a front view, relief of the back, and then a side view, the last 2 pages showing what each of the, what the components are. And actually to, apologies to your point, this particular version of the document doesn't show that the roof line is 6 inches shorter, but the final version of it will. In fact, the reason why we had to lower the roof line was after we did the first set of drawings and went through the HGRB and got the original approval, we found out our house was tilted, and so the survey indicated that the house was somewhat tilted, so to build the structure out, we would have gone past the 7.6 variance. So we made the new structure shorter, slightly smaller, and the width is slightly smaller, which will bring the roof down a little bit, about 6 inches. It'll be hardly noticeable from sort of the eyeballing of the street, but it may have sort of, maybe of interest to you. So the variance is still the same, the layout and the property and the overall sort of site plan is identical. This is the one.
Identical to a prior.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the overall plan and the variance we're asking for is still the same. There is, the final set of documents we'll be submitting to the building department will indicate a slight difference in the height of the building and the width of the new structure, but the end part of the structure will still stop at the 7.6. And the reason why the building is slightly smaller is in order to meet that 7.6
And
threshold.
What was the height on the building? It is.
The peak of the roof currently is 28 feet, 3
so
inches.
you're
In
well
fact,
within the limitations.
Yeah, the new peak will actually be about 27, 27.10 or 27.9.
Okay. Would you want to show the public that those last 2 pages or?
Yeah, sure. You're
so they-
welcome to it. All right. So with that in mind, I want to go through, and if you'll indulge me, I know this is a brand new hearing, but in defense of sort of the particulars, I'm going to walk through sort of the 5 primary considerations for variance, and I'm going to use the terms and words that were sort of memorialized by this very board the previous time that this particular application was submitted. In regards to whether or not this produces an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties.
Chris, I'll stop you here for a second. Just make sure you're not reading anything that
Oh, I won't be reading it
was
from an
not
opinion
made
standpoint.
part of the record. Like, for instance, you have had to make a record today on
Oh, sure.
specific facts,
Mhm.
so if
No, I'm gonna make- I'm
as
gonna
you're
make a-
reading through it, if a fact wasn't brought out.
Agreed. I'm gonna make a record that is.
Okay.
I'll be opinionating, but I'll be using words that I'm happy to be borrowing
Okay,
from your
good.
predecessors. So with the 5 characteristics, the 5 aspects for those that would like to hear it, there are 5 areas that we want to decide upon. Does the proposed variance create an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to the nearby properties? Can the relief that the applicant is seeking be achieved by other feasible means?
Can you just read that just a little slower?
Oh,
It's the
sure.
second-
Does the proposed addition produce an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties? Second is the benefit sought by the applicant, can it be achieved by other feasible means? The third, is the requested variance substantial? Fourth is, will there be an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. And while that sounds a lot like one, there are some terms of art nuances different there. And then the fifth one is, are the alleged difficulties necessitating the variance self-created? So let's go and we'll look at sort of one by one. Specifically, let's talk about sort of the proposed addition, but whether or not it's an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties. The key words here are obviously character and detriment to nearby properties. Is our understanding from a legal standpoint, but the intent behind this type of rule doesn't speak to view sheds, doesn't speak to components that in which neighbors do not have sort of a legal remedy around. It speaks to concepts of overall value. We're not installing an apartment building. We're not building a cell tower. We're not creating a commercial space or a type of building that is different than anything else on Garden Street or within the village, or creates sort of a new type of structure that requires an entire new way of sort of thinking about what the street or what the component of the street is. So no, in our opinion, and as we make the proposal, we do not feel this produces an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties. So can this applicant, can we achieve this through other feasible means? As evidenced by documentation from previous design work and studies, the quick answer to that is no. We worked at a variety of other alternatives and designs. And it's unfortunately it's not just up to us or not just up to the ZBA, but there's a number of village boards and village components that go into this process, and everyone we could think of was consulted in order to sort of make this as sort of strong as possible. And so we feel the application we submitted cannot be achieved through other reasonable means. Is the request of the variance substantial? Yes, we believe it is substantial in the sense that while it's only 6.5 or 6.5 feet that we're talking about in total. In a village of inches, 6.5 feet is quite a lot of space, and so we're not looking just for a 1 or 2 inch sort of variance, and that's why I think having a public hearing and making sure our neighbors have a chance to be heard is vitally important. To that point, I think this change is in fact substantial given sort of the size of the house and what we're looking to do. The proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. Again, physical or environmental. We're not creating new runoff situations. We're not installing any kind of generators or power creators or things that add to pollution or change the environmental conditions of the street itself. From a physical and environmental standpoint, I think we're very well in the clear in terms of not having an adverse effect. And then finally, is the alleged sort of difficulty variance, was it self-created? No, it was not self-created. As said, dealing with a bunch of other boards, including the HDRB, we're hemmed in at a bunch of different directions and have to get input from a bunch of directions, and so in order to satisfy everyone, we can't always get what we want, and so we've created sort of a design that was of our making, that is a compromise solution that that requires this variance, but in that regard, no, this variance was not self-created. We're not doing this sort of just willy-nilly and creating a design on our own. So across those 5 principles, we feel confident that the board, the ZBA will act as a previous version has done and grant us the variance that we're asking for today. So thank you for your time, and look forward to what you guys have to say.
The HDR, the letter, it's still current, correct?
The HDRB certificate of appropriateness is valid through August 19th, so we have until then to get a building permit.
And you have a copy of that? Is that in the file here? Or?
I believe it is. I believe actually it was in the Manila. Was it in the Manila
Yeah.
folder?
The Manila folder had some of the documents, but not all. Oh, here we go.
Well, that was the letter. So that was also in the letter
That's
was a
from-
letter from Al.
From the board to us.
Yeah, from the board
that
there, who was-
the copy I gave you? Okay,
Yeah, so there was probably a
sorry.
copy of each
All right.
letter.
We're all set
in
then.
that. Yeah.
We're all set.
Indicating sort of their approval of the particular design, and urging your
This
yes
is,
vote.
this is 2015.
Right.
Yes, that's through 2015.
That's
so
right, but it does, this is current through August of 2007.
That original C of O was would have expired in April, but we had to get a new C of O in August of 2015, which has a 2-year deadline and ends on August 8th.
Chris, did you say that the HDRB did not approve any of these except for number 4?
Correct. Nor did they approve the 8 other designs that we walked through with them. From HDRB's point of view, the primary considerations were around massing of the building, making sure the character of the current structure was retained, and that the cadence of our building with its neighbors remained.
Any other questions? Nope. All right, we'll take a we'll hear from the public if you.
Oh, we'll take a moment. You guys like to inspect the documents a little bit
Oh,
more?
you want to look at the documents before you make any comments, or?
What I would like to know is, the last time I was here, Chris, was that in HD, that was the historic, when they made the vote in May of last year?
I think you were at both the ZBA and the HDRB.
One meeting.
Oh, there was both the HDRB. That was both the HDRB. Because it was
Okay,
the one
so
that
where
matched
they,
it.
yeah, so.
Yeah, it wasn't before
Yeah.
this board, I don't think.
Yeah, it was, I think you were at the HDRB meeting, which at the time was, when we had that public hearing, it was April 25th.
Yeah,
April?
if you could
So we
state your
weren't
name for
back.
the record so we know.
You were back.
Yeah,
You were
it
back.
will-
Came back May 1st.
Well, we were granted the C of O in April, and so the meeting was early. I know you guys had just come back, I think, as you were
They
just
would
maybe a
came
month or
in
two.
April 1st.
Yeah.
Okay.
Remember, because you guys were here in Max Wapman was here.
Yes. So my name is Hope Torino. I'm directly across from the lot that would be built on.
What number?
16
16.
Garden Street. Do you want me to speak?
Yes, certainly. So,
The first thing I just take some issue with is that we did not receive, we were gone the months that you started this process. And we had renters in our house, we were renting upstate for 10 months, we came back to the final hearing of the historic board, which we, I think, got notice of about a week and a half to 2 weeks before. So we were pretty shocked. We didn't know there was anything that was supposed to occur on that lot. We didn't know Chris and Jen had been pursuing this. We hadn't been invited to any of the meetings. Also, tonight, none of these people are the immediate people that you sent those notices to, even though you may think that's true. All the people who I think you have to send notice to are actually absentee right now, except us. I mean, not Dan next door to you on the left, the yellow house. But Gemma, I spoke with, and she said she had been away. She just signed for the document, I think, like last Saturday. So she didn't know and didn't feel like she had time to understand and didn't seem to know much about the project at all. The people to our left also are absentee owners, and I
Oh, they
don't know if
built
they've, who is that? What-
The Van Tassels?
Chris, yes.
They
So
live built down.
did they get their,
Yes.
and they got it back to you and,
Mhm.
okay. And then I think the next house over, which also has a little bit of a sight line towards you, that's also an absentee owner. And then Max's house has been sold to a woman who has rented it for 2 years. So I don't know, did you get
Yeah.
something back from her
And I spoke.
that she
Yeah.
received it? Okay. So that, I just want to make sure that was legit and not just run over. I was surprised also to find that a lot of my neighbors didn't know about the project. Some of them are here tonight at all. So for me, I feel like one of the things about Garden Street and the beauty of Garden Street, it's a one-block street and it has an incredible view to it that everybody comments on. And in a way, I feel like everybody should get the letter, not just the immediate people. I don't know what the legal ease is around that, but to me, it feels like you're taking something out of this street that is enjoyed by all the people on the street who drive up and down it, pass it, walk it, bought on that street. That being the view to Crow's Nest Mountain, and the the fjord that's, you see the layers through to that majestic mountain. So just 1 minute, I wanted to see if there was some,
and let me interrupt Hope for a second. You're looking at your letter, right?
not yet.
Okay, good, because, you know, we have a copy of your letter, and it's in our record.
Okay.
But, yeah, I'd like you to reference to that too, if you would, so.
Okay. I actually have a feeling that a chunk of that letter was left out, so I'm gonna read it as I think the one that I gave to you. We also feel like we just barely got a minute to think about this. 2 weeks is a small amount of time when 2 people are working, 2 small kids driving all over. And I had the impression from Chris that none of this was really up for review from his letter. That's what I was trying to look at, what the letter you sent to us, Chris, says. As likely there will not be a second public hearing on the addition, that the HDRB is still valid. So it sounds like that's not exactly true, that the zoning.
The HDRB and the ZBA are different organizations. and so
Okay, and they're still
this-
holding up till August 19th.
Yeah, because
Okay.
we have to get a variance from the ZBA and a certificate of appropriateness of the design from the
This
HDRB.
meeting
This is specifically for the ZBA
okay,
variance.
was open to
Yeah.
appeals. Okay, good. So that, I just wanted to clarify all that. I think, one, I wanted to say that Al hoped he could be here. This is emotional for me. It's very hard every time this comes up. But I'm trying to be just impartial, and I'm just gonna read, Chris, what I gave to the board I dropped off earlier today. Dear Chris and Jen Daly and the Cold Spring Zoning Board, as you know, we want to keep good and peaceful relations on our great and beloved street. I understand you bought 19 Garden Street with an eye toward expansion. On the one hand, this seems you're right. On the other hand, it will take away 2 cherished aspects of Garden Street and be at the expense of our home value. Furthermore, we believe it will set precedents against preserving what is a unique aspect of Cold Spring, small, intimate homes reflecting a unique historic time, and finally, its great natural beauty that include the unique fjords that surround us. One, it will rob others of the incredible surprise of a view to Crow's Nest, Fjord Mountain, and Waterfall, the layered landscape that locals and the increasing tourists enjoy. Is this the same letter you have?
Yes, it is, but I want you to read, I could read it in the record, but I'd rather use it you wrote the letter.
Okay, that's okay. It's just we wrote 4 versions and we edited, and there's one
It
form
it
we have to
is
add.
matching everything I read.
Okay.
I would, thanks.
2, it will disturb the 3 historic cottages that are also a defining feature of Garden Street and which have their own historic value. I'm sorry, that's number 2. 3, it will diminish the value that was the reason for our purchase of our home, the sightline views to Crow's Nest Mountain from our home's kitchen, porch, sidewalk, and bedroom. This view is the great pleasure we have each day, sharing that view with family and friends in person and in photos over the years. We have viewed eagles, migrating birds, and all kinds of beautiful lighting and mystical weather patterns out our front door. Others take deliberate walks to enjoy this view. Approximately 4 years ago, during a real estate assessment, our view to Crow's Nest were and are considered a real feature and strength point of sale when assessing the value of our home. For 16 Garden Street and some others, there will be a change in sightlines to this view. For us in particular, that view is integral to the value of our home. We see that the daily addition will encroach on the surrounding beauty, taking a $1 million view for their own while decreasing the value of our home, causing possible financial hardship for us. 4, we fear the Dalys do not recognize the temporariness of their family's needs in the grand scheme, that their family may eventually move on for unforeseen reasons. And what then? This view will be gone forever. A great gem of Cold Spring will be gone forever while they vacate to another property. Furthermore, building a disproportionately large, expensive home is the kind of movement which can disrupt the value of the historic community, one which is preserved precisely because overbuilding, maxing out lots, valuing real estate over character, natural beauty, neighborly and community concern has been stopped and limited in order to retain the very character that makes Cold Spring unique. And there's a piece in here that I really wanted to add from another writing, if you don't mind. That this home has already been added to on the back. That process, which required many years of deliberation from the board, apparently because the back addition would obstruct the sight lines across the backyards for the church, was of much smaller consequence than this addition. Why then should the Dalys be allowed to install a huge addition, essentially a second home in their lot, which clearly obstructs the sightlines for all in this street, village, and for our home in particular? What are the guidelines for keeping the village unique and for preserving the surprising beauty that surrounds it? Do we not have a right to preserve a main feature of our home, the view to Crow's Nest? And okay, and then the final thing was really what I started with, is that it just seemed like I'll read it. Finally, there have been several problems with the process to this point. One is that we did not receive notice at all of the historic review board meetings until we returned to our home in May, which is probably April. Thus, so that could be
Well,
adjusted.
just real quick, to talk about process. So in April 2015, when we were in the early part of 2015, we were going through the process. The only meetings that public notices are required about are this particular type of meeting, which is an actual public workshop in which the decisions are made. With the HGB, there were 6 meetings. 5 of them, however, were workshops, meaning they were opportunities for Jen and I to meet with the HGB and discuss what's potentially acceptable and what's not.
Without public
No,
input.
the public meetings for the village are always broadcast and are always published out, both on the village website and announced through official channels. But there isn't an obligation by anyone to make a specific, hey, we're having 6 workshop meetings. There is an obligation when we have these particular types of public workshops in which decisions are actually made. From a notification standpoint, all notifications which we were legally obliged to do so, including actually past what we're legally obliged to do so, because we're including kitty corner to our lots, which legally we don't necessarily need to do. We've gone above and beyond what the legal requirements are for all of the actual public workshop meetings that we've occurred. Also, to your first point though, when you did return, I take issue with the fact that you say you did not know about the building until the HW meeting. You and myself and Al sat down on several occasions during the design process to look at the ideas that we had, including
That was right before the meeting.
including looking at the fact that the view shed from your porch would be disturbed, but the view shed from your second floor would not be. In addition,
That's just not true.
Cold Spring does not have a view shed protection act or of any sort.
Well, you can make your arguments, Chris. I'm here to voice a public concern, my personal concern, especially that whatever you do there, that you bought that property, that one of the prior members of the board, that night, we had 5 people here voting
For the HW, yeah.
for the HDRP. 2 of them voiced great opposition, including why not buy a house that fits your family and your needs to begin with, rather than buying one with the assumption you'll get to build and disrupt 3 historic homes. Those 2 people passed on their voting. I don't
One voted,
understand.
it was 3-1, 3-1 and 1 abstention.
I think there were 2 abstentions.
It was.
But this all occurred in
This
the
is the HGB, this is the
Yes.
HGB.
That's not.
Okay,
That was
and
Michael
it's all
DeGiulis.
done.
It was Michael
anyway.
DeGiulis who extended, but it
Well,
was.
that is part of
down
my
the vote.
objection and what I wanted to speak about tonight, because I felt it was
Actually,
an
because I
odd
know
and.
the parcel on the Guard Street. Do you guys happen to know the square footage of your house? Total square footage of your house?
What?
Yeah,
16 and change.
16 and change. So with the addition, ours will end up at 18 and change. So part of the consideration that has been made in the press, certainly locally, during this process, was just how big of an addition this is. When in fact, we're gonna be the 6th largest house on just Garden Street, meaning we're not gonna be that big.
Okay.
It's not a massive, giant structure, at least from a consideration.
Okay. From my point of view, it overtakes a serious view that's been there for a long time and was a defining purchasing point when I bought my house. That will be gone. I'll be looking at a row house. Honestly, if I had been able to be privy to the historical review boards, I would have been fighting for you just to have a lower roof line, period. You know, you can have a large open barn, so I didn't even care so much that it looks exactly like the gingerbreads. In fact, I think that's kind of a mistake. But I just would have been fighting for a lower line so that that mountain is still visible and comes through as part of that village street, rather than we starting to block it off and have just 2 rows of houses. What makes Garden Street spectacular and particularly exciting for people and for tourists who come, and I'm telling you, every day I watch people walk down and photograph, paint, have outings, painting and looking at thing. I've had my own child's been photographed with that behind them for magazines that were, where they use that view. It's one of the defining views of Cold Spring. That's my opinion. It's just my public opinion. And that it will, that your addition will take something from our home that we've spent 13 years paying for. The other, I just wanted to make
By the
a
way,
couple more.
I believe everything you've mentioned so
Yeah.
far is exactly what's in that letter that you had
Yes.
given me earlier.
So far, it's exact, except I was asking why was there so much fight for a very teeny, similar addition to the yellow house to the right of Chris. They spent 3 to 4 years getting approval for that, and they were saying that they couldn't even put on a little balcony off the back that no one would see except the church parkers. Why was that such a fight? And this is
Was this
going
the
through.
house on Fair Street?
No,
It's the exact same
this is-
house. This
so
house has already had a big addition.
There was an addition put
a
on,
big
at the
fight.
back house in 2008.
Right.
Yeah,
And it
2008.
went on and on and on, and I watched those owners go on and on and on. They couldn't even get a little balcony off the back of the house that isn't visible to anybody except the people who park in the church. And, well, and the next 2 neighbors, maybe they were fighting it, I don't know. But I heard that the church, so to me, it just feels like, what are the rules and the zoning laws?
Well,
Is
that's an
it
interesting point.
personal preference, who gets to go through and doesn't go through, or are there zoning laws that say?
Well, there's zoning laws and everything is sort of fact-driven in the end. You just have to comport with the zoning requirements, and of course, part of the zoning requirements are applications for variances, and that's really why we exist. Otherwise, people could build as long as they built in conformity, there would be nothing for us to decide. So everything is just, it'll be fact-driven, guided by the zoning
Luckily, we
codes.
have a suburban zoning code, so.
Well, it's-
In a non-suburban environment. so you guys are busy.
But these type of situations do arise.
Yeah.
And what's
where
interesting,
there's
actually-
a difference of opinion and valid points.
And what's really interesting is around the church parking lot, about whether or not that's considered public space or not, because that's a very sort of legally arguable point. And I think that was, certainly came up during that initial concept, but it's come up, I think, a couple times since, because our neighbors at 25 they do an addition, but they refixed their kitchen and they put some new doors always, and actually, I remember them they were wondering if they had to go to the HDRB, but they didn't, because the building inspector for this time
Yeah.
deemed that the driveway and the parking lot of the church site was not that public space and didn't necessarily require
Right.
variance.
Well, that's
So, it's like
what
a-
I'm
it's
saying.
weird.
It seems like there is not some clarity of the laws around that and why there's so much resistance around, including my neighbor Gemma, who said she couldn't even put new windows in. They had, she had so much trouble getting
Yeah.
windows in. But I wanted to just finish by saying, I don't have much more to say. I think it's obvious that it's what you get versus what we lose, or what we get and what you lose. That's, to me, it's like a simple thing, although I think many people will lose and be disappointed to lose that view through there. To me, it's the value of your house even, is that you have that view that goes through. You'll get to see it from the inside, but it doesn't allow for that great expanse across the river. But the other thing I wanted to say is that you pointed out 4 points to producing undesirable change. So I feel it does, because it corrupts the overall value of our home and the other homes that enjoy that view that's obviously been preserved for a long time by people not deciding to build on it. 2, can be achieved by other means. I just feel I would have liked to have heard the earlier attempts to review board. I know that's over, so I won't go on about that, because I would have asked for something lower. The physical environmental issue, I have one question, is will you have parking on your lot? Will you be able to park your car? Or will you be
Same
on the
parking,
street?
same parking lot.
Same
Same
parking.
same.
So the house is
same-
set back,
Yeah,
but it still has the high roof line.
yeah, you can see here from the site plan, this is the Garden Street here, and so this is the current driveway that exists, and it'll be the same driveway.
Okay, good. And then the following thing, varying self-created, I guess the one objection I would have to that is that self-created in that you bought a home with the knowledge that the home would be too small and you wanted to build on that lot with that view behind it. And to me, it's just a value issue that it feels like development to me rather than we want to be in the village and find the house that works for us. You know, leaving things historically preserved and set. So I don't have any other objections, but I'm glad to have gotten heard and to have said what's been on our mind all this
And
time.
in addition to hearing the comments here that we've gotten recorded, we also have a copy of your letter.
Yeah, you have a copy, but you
admitted-
don't have one of the paragraphs I'd like to submit.
Okay.
Can I do that
Okay,
separately?
sure.
Okay. And I don't know about these comments are now recorded, right?
Yep.
That I just said, because I don't have a written, typed out thing for that.
Fifth draft, all right.
What?
Fifth, this is the fifth draft?
I spent a good part of my vacation on this.
Oh, boy.
Hope, do you have a photo of the view from your house?
Yes, I did bring, I tried to pull them up. They're not great photos. I'd be happy to submit something more substantial. We ran around like maniacs trying to get what little we did get put together. So this is, let's see if that'll open it. So this is from our doorstep. This. So that will be.
Is this your first level or second level?
This is our first level. This is, so it's not a great photograph, honestly. This is, I think I grabbed this from.
Actually, it's a good photograph because it's the sun coming up from the east hitting the mountains, so, yeah.
So
outline.
here's his driveway now. He's saying that the building will be here, but it will be there.
That's right.
It'll cover this, to this height.
And just show it to Chris too, just so that
No,
we.
I mean, I've seen it.
He's
We've
seen it.
we've
He
seen it. We've
stood on
done-
the porch.
And we did some view
And-
studies with them
Right.
early on in the process, and so that's why I find it slightly disingenuous.
Okay.
That, you know.
But you
Well,
had
the
discussions
bedroom-
about the same
Yeah.
issue right
that
now.
is good.
The
And-
bedroom view will be very different,
Well-
even though once that house is there, this is what you'll have. This will be down. It'll be like at the back of the street, you can just see a little lump. You will not see this view that goes through the yellow house and the church and the fact that you see all the way across the river to that mountain.
You know,
That will be your
And
view.
show it
That
if you
will
would
be
to
your
Allison
view,
Antoine
not ours.
and Ellie.
and, I mean, and spiritually, I understand and sympathize with the objective, but the question is whether or not views have a legal
This
standing.
is from
and-
Well,
us.
it's a point being made, that's all.
This is the driveway he's talking about.
Yeah, so this is
The
one
building
box.
will
Yes,
be
yeah.
that high, and we will see, that's basically the front of these houses. It'll be row houses, the way like Church Street looks, like it just will not have this opening that everybody walks through. People
Well, again,
enjoy.
it'll still have an
That's my-
opening. It won't have an opening from that particular view. Right now, there is, as said, there'll be a 35-foot gap between buildings, even after we construct. So to say that the entirety of the view will go away is incorrect.
Well, it'll go away
It will-
for
Agreed.
our property.
It will be a smaller slice than it exists today. However, it's not being eradicated.
It's
and-
being eradicated, in my opinion. You can say that, but I want to say eradicated. It's being eradicated.
But we've
That will be
seen
gone.
the evidence with your
Okay.
photo, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So
Thank you.
we do have that image.
Anyone else need to see?
Actually, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead. Name for the record if you would.
Michael Mueller, 43 Garden Street. Do you have a more detailed drawing, maybe 3D modeling of what this is supposed to look like? Because it's really hard to picture how it's really going to look.
I don't happen to have any of that documentation with me at the moment. At this point.
Did he see the plans?
I'm not sure.
I mean, I looked at that, it's
Yeah.
really hard to tell. I mean, it's very minimal. It's really hard to say what the street will look like.
But yeah,
You know.
and
This
the
is
depth
other
of the
piece I
addition
had,
from the front of it to the back is what?
The depth of the
You already know the height,
Right.
but the depth can
sure.
give you a 3D notion. What is the side wall, the southerly wall of the addition, lengthwise?
apologize, I don't have that, I don't know if I have that sheet here in front of me, let me see if I have it.
Okay, great.
Because I've got some other elevations and drawings.
Site plan that shows the building construction zone.
Actually, I'll get copies itself. That's what we get. Is that
Do we not
right?
have that, or am I missing?
So what's the question?
Yeah, Chris, do we have a site plan, the proposed structure actually on a survey?
Yeah, there should have been a survey in each one of the blue folders, and if not, I asked there.
And this doesn't show the addition.
This doesn't show the addition.
No, so the site plan is the first page in the 5-page set, which should.
That should have been on that.
I see.
So it says, well, from looking at, like, guessing either.
Trying to get, I would tell you that it's, I mean, if that's 7.6, I mean, it's probably, it's under, I mean, it's 30 feet. 1, 2, 3. It's certainly under 30 feet, probably 25 feet from front to back in terms of
The southerly wall to the proposed addition. Length of it.
the length of it is.
Just so you know the depth.
I'm sorry, so, you mean, I'm
The
sorry,
depth
when you
of
say,
the-
depth, do you mean?
The addition
this
itself,
size? This-
yeah.
This depth here?
No, the depth going east-west.
But I think, I'm gonna guess it's under 28 feet. But I'd have to look, I'm gonna try to see if I can find a specific set of information.
I mean, that's, I think, in essence, what you're asking in part about a 3D.
Well, I think he's like, I think.
But you
he's-
also.
Well, I'm a very visual person. It's really hard to picture what it's really going to look like and feel like, you know, from that very minimal, you know, line drawing. So, I mean, some sort of like full color 3D rendering would be very helpful to really.
Yeah, we
get a-
usually, we don't ordinarily get that. That would be a special, like, artist rendition. It's not typical unless, or they did an actual build-out of the neighborhood with the proposed structure. We don't normally get that, but there's a question in the back?
Yeah, so Rebecca Sperling, 34 Garden Street, no point of contention, just point of curiosity.
Can't hear.
Um,
Yeah, could you say your name louder for the
Yeah,
record?
Rebecca Sperling.
Rebecca
34
Sperling.
Garden. So I've been in that backyard,
Mhm.
so I can get a better idea just asking for dimensions. So how close to that chain link fence that was on Max's side are you talking about?
7.5 feet.
All right, so is that where you're asking for the variance, on that side?
Technically, no, the variance we're asking for is.
Is it back by the
well,
fence?
no, the
It's
variance-
cumulative.
The variance we're asking for is a side yard variance, but there's two kinds of side yard variances. There's a
Okay.
specific, like, actual distance to your side yard, and then there's a cumulative total of your two side yards.
Got it.
Which is for a narrow lot, which
Right.
is an exception,
And
where the
because-
lot's so narrow.
Because the separation we have with our northerly folks, the guys on 23, is only 1.5 feet. That 1.5 feet.
You're talking north, so that's the yellow house?
Yeah, the yellow house, yes,
Okay,
Dan's
because
house.
it's very small.
Right, so that's a
Okay.
1.5 feet. That plus where we end up with our new side yard is in 7.5 feet, that ends up being 9.5 feet or 9 feet and change.
Got it.
The cumulative total has to be 15 feet.
Got it.
It's
So you
other
want
way.
the variance in the back?
No, we want the variance on the side.
Okay, all
It's a,
right.
it's a,
I'm
I
sorry,
know,
I'm-
it's funny, it's a, it's all depends on how we look at it. It's, yeah, I'll show you the site plan here.
So it's set back, I'm just trying to, because I actually have watered back there.
Oh, yeah, right, so you see the street, so
Yeah.
here's Garden
It's
Street.
in there.
Yeah.
Here's Garden Street, so here's the front of the house. So
Yeah.
this is all the new structure. And so
Okay.
what we're asking for is a side yard variance because
Mhm.
the cumulative total of this side yard and that little tiny side yard there
Got it,
doesn't meet the 15-foot minimum.
got
If for some reason, if this, for example, was 7.5 feet
it. So point
wide,
to the fence.
the point of fence is this direction.
That's the back
Yeah,
fence.
this-
Point to the chain link.
Well, this is the back fence.
Yeah, that's-
So
That's
this
the
is
back
average
fence,
red,
and that's
red bar.
Max.
Yes, this is Max. This
Or
is
was Max.
this is the this
Thank you.
is house formerly known as Watman's chain link fence.
Got it,
And so
okay.
it's a 7.5 foot variance. So
Got
we're
it.
asking for a 6.5 foot variance because we're going to go to the 7.5 foot line because we need a 6.5 foot to cover the cumulative total of our two side yards.
Got it, and where's the shed?
The
There,
shed is
so the
here.
shed's gonna just stay there.
Right, and the back of the structure is lines up
equal to
identical.
the.
Yes.
Got it,
Well,
thank you, I appreciate
Yeah, no
it.
worries.
So the driveway is in front of that structure?
Yeah, this is the same
Yes,
driveway
it's
as
the
today,
same.
and it's the same decrepit fence that I'm sorting out. We're gonna get this any day now. I hate myself.
Where are the entrances to this?
So there will still be a side entrance or main entrance here at the front, through the porch, and then there will be a main entrance here. Like currently, there is an existing walkway that we will continue to use, and it goes right up to the next space.
Okay.
So there'll be a new sort of main primary door here. Right now, there's a door kind of on the kitchen side, and then this sort of main front door. So that front door will remain, and then this goes.
And then this will go also into this house, this part of the house.
Yeah, the intent for the interior, I can have to show you.
Just, the house looks a little like a duplex, and I didn't know if there was some intention of, increasing cars on the street.
Oh, no, so the intent here is, so this is the first floor, this is the first floor, this is the second floor, so this will become the new entrance. And then this is gonna be intentional, this will be sort of an all open space. And then, right, and then there's a small set of stairs, and then this is the bedroom that will be at the top. And this is the current structure.
This is the entry.
We gotta talk to the ZBA about that, we gotta talk to the
Right,
HDRB.
This is supposed to be on there.
Right. That's how.
You could dig down.
We, for some reason, like, we got a hassle about that too. We wanted to put it in the basement. We're like, why do we basement have here?
Storage.
On the same.
Because we're never gonna get another one.
Chris, I worry that you put this in, the two boys are gonna be as big and tall as you, and they're gonna have no place, no garage, no attic, right? No basement.
Well, the real concern is that they're gonna be that size in the house as it currently exists, and we're gonna, we'll tear that house down one step at a
This is gonna grow
time.
out of
Actually.
1,800 square feet too. So please just think about that, because that would be a huge change for everybody that you may not want to stay in for very long. Or job changes, the economy dips, anything like that. I just want you to please really consider whether this is the addition for you versus buying a bigger house property than where your kids can play football and basketball and hit a bat and run around and play frisbee and have their friends over. Because you're still gonna have a very small parlor room house.
Yeah.
I know what it's like to live in it. We outgrew it with two girls who
Yeah.
are half the height of your boys are gonna be.
Yeah, one of
And
these-
we have more storage.
One of the considerations is that right now there's a pergola on that space. And so from a usable backyard space, we're gonna have the same amount of usable backyard space that we, tomorrow would be
Which
today.
is still not enough.
It's still not a significant
In
amount of
about 2
space.
years,
I'm-
we're gonna
I'm
be
hoping to get rid of that shed.
saying, we put all this money into this, hope I can get our money out, because we still need to get a bigger place with a garage, an attic, a place for the drum set, whatever else might come along. And or you could potentially need to change jobs. So I'm just asking you, as your neighbor, who's been here a lot longer than you, I'm just saying, please make sure you're gonna be there 20 years or more. Because what you won't be sure of, you can't be sure of. Because to me, you're taking a lot away from us, period.
Well, I mean, from a community involvement standpoint, my wife has served on the Haldane School Board for the last 4 years, including president of the last 2. I'm an active participant in.
So is Alice, who did the entire community thing,
Sure.
ran all the music, did loads and loads of benefits, played at the school, did all kinds of
I
things.
say it not to tap my own horn, but in this case, we're here for the long haul. We're here from.
But you
a
don't
community
know.
basis.
So, Hope, I think we understand that point.
Just wanna-
And we want to hear from others in the public if they would like to.
Yeah, I just want to
Go
make
ahead.
a statement. I mean, being kind of new to this process and to this project, I mean, my concern coming in was that there was going to be this huge structure, built on the property that would just look wrong, feel wrong, be out of character. I mean, like an extreme example would be that gigantic house that someone built in Nelsonville.
Oh,
a
yeah,
small
the
property.
one on top of
I
the
mean, it
building.
just doesn't make any sense, right? So, the
They
fear
built it
was
twice,
that,
too.
right. So
But
the fear was
yeah.
that something gigantic was being built there, and that would set a precedent, and other things like that would happen, people maxing out lots, and, there goes the village, right? So that was a concern. The other thing is that beautiful view. If there was a book about Cold Spring, and there was a top 10, beautiful shots of Cold Spring, standing there in garden looking that way would be one of those shots. It's amazing. So I don't know, I can't tell without a better drawing whether, how much of that view would be lost. But losing that, would be something, And again, it's your property, your right to do what you need to do, but, that would be lost. So that's something to think about.
Is there anybody else in the public who would like to comment? Who's here this application. Any of the board members have any questions right now? Or did you need to respond to anything that you haven't already
Yeah, I just wanted
responded
to
to?
make this one last comment, because I was doing some research on this, because I know view shed considerations is a common topic that comes up before this board, and comes up before the HGB. And I would actually advocate that we should think about whether or not this village should have a view shed ordinance, or not. And it was the Dunkin' Donuts that created the the non-franchise rule. I think that's, been positive and negative behind it, but certainly there are inciting incidents. Currently, the village does not have a view shed ordinance. And so concepts of views and concepts of sort of visible lines of sight in regards to R1 zoning and in regards to residential are not sort of legally binding, or there is no legal standing. There is legal standing from commercial, from a business property standpoint, but not from a legal standpoint, from a residential standpoint. And I sympathize with that concern, and I would probably advocate and vote for a view shed ordinance if it were to pass. But today, there isn't one. And I know this board in previous incarnations had the same discussion. The HGB had the same discussion around me. I know this board and HGB had the same consideration around Richard Shea's house that he built on Market Street. Not Market Street, Morris. Is that Morris or Chestnut? It's Morris on that point. I always get those two confused and merged. And so I know it's a topic that comes up in the village quite a lot. But the decision is always the same, and the precedent's always the same. Right now, there is no legal tender behind view sheds. And it's sympathetic, but from a term of art standpoint, the rules are the rules.
But indirectly, there is a density building, an over density, and in their case, it happens to be under the 30%. It's 26.5.
Yeah, well, I think density can be described in two ways. One is, you're right, is massing of a building within a lot itself, and then massing of multiple buildings across multiple lots.
And the way there's an objection here is in essence how the structure is being built across the lot.
Well, I think
rather than-
a significant consideration that came through the HDRB is in thinking about the village as a whole. I think it's important to recognize the natural massing of structures in a village setting. It's also important to mention, across 1517, which is a double lot, there's actually a foundation of a building on 17 Garden Street waiting to be built, and it never was built, but there's a foundation there waiting to be built. That lot was always intended to have a house. This is a double lot. When we say double lot, it's not 10 times the size of additional lots. It's not it's not 4 feet bigger than the others. It's literally twice the size of the two lots that are right next to us. It's clear from an original intent and planning standpoint that there was supposed to be a house there. The fact that there isn't happens to be an interesting artifact of the history of the village. But to say that, oh, we can't put a structure there because it's going to create it too dense, I think flies in the face of what the original planning of the village was. And if we're talking about it from a historical standpoint, or we're talking about it from a character standpoint.
And where did you get that information from?
Well, talking to Max Wattman about 17, and then doing some research with the Betty Watson folks, and seeing on their survey of 1517 where that foundation actually sits. But then also just looking at the math and the numbers. The size of our lot is exactly to the inch, twice the size of our lots next to us. That's not by accident. That's because originally, when these lots were planned out, there was going to be a house there. And we talk about character, we talk about sort of the sentiment, the environment of the building. I honestly don't think there is anything, view sheds aside, and knowing that a particular view is quite beautiful and it's not in fact going to go away, though it may be diminished from a particular certain angle. The original intent of the village is to create density. That's a defining characteristic of Goldsmith, certainly in the lower village.
Well, there's also a character that's currently existing, but go ahead.
I just want to say a couple things.
And you, for the record, your name and...
Susan Peel, and
Okay.
I'm on Fair Street,
Oh.
actually 13 Fair Street. So my primary thing is driving around because our street is blocked on Sundays.
Yeah.
So we have to use Garden if we want to get, or if we want to get to Maine. So I just wanted to mention parking. With a variance, I know the variance doesn't go to the person, it goes to the property. So for instance, when I looked at the earlier drawings, it was grouped, it looked more like an addition. It might not have been aesthetically pleasing, but it looked more like an addition. Now it looks a little bit more like a duplex. And so if you were to sell it, for instance, somebody with an eye to buy might be saying, oh, we could put a separate entrance over here and use it as a duplex, which would infer more parking.
Well, that would be a clear violation of current Cold Spring zoning.
Yeah,
The
single
building-
family residence.
Single family residence.
The building department would never allow.
Or an Airbnb.
That's still illegal.
That's still illegal.
Is it still
Yeah.
illegal? Okay, so you're protected.
Especially
now.
Those are
parties that
issues,
get-
yeah.
And we have never issued a permit to give a go from one family to two family.
That's good to know.
I-
Okay, good.
I personally, chose to live in Gold Spring and not in a hotel or next to a hotel, so I'm hoping my neighbors don't Airbnb as well.
Yeah.
So I'm with you.
And another thing I wanted to say was I really appreciate having gone through these boards from the other side of things. I really appreciate that you've gone through for 2 years, it looks like, and worked with the boards. But I also want to mention the idea of character. And I think one of the things that made this village important when I moved in was the character of neighbors and neighborhoods. And what's increasingly happening is that people don't know their neighbors and they don't try to get to know their neighbors. What they try to do is come in and make it work for themselves in whatever that means. And so it's sad to me, for instance, when Hope is saying that she didn't find out about the historic district review process until the final public hearing. I mean, if something's going to change the character of a building that much, maybe the public hearing should be first, not last, after they've gone through all the design.
Well, did you have to put in for the workshops,
Oh, yeah, that's-
advertise the
yeah, all the
workshops? See,
same.
the public can come and see the workshops. They
Yeah, but I
don't.
mean, maybe the immediate public should be notified earlier in the process.
I mean, I think it's a comment around the process. I mean,
Yeah,
I know
and
there's been
actually
discussions
Seth
about
Gallagher-
increasing,
Yeah.
increasing the alerting.
Seth Gallagher said to me once during the whole shed thing, maybe what should come out of this, he said this, is that people should be notified earlier on in the process.
Yeah.
And I really think what that would do would be it would help to create more community between the people who have been here for a long time and the people who are coming in. That we talk earlier on and maybe like Hope could say, just protect our view shed, make it 40 feet longer, we don't care, just protect our view shed, and it would help.
John,
I support it. Having watching my wife on the school board, same thing.
do
Like,
our, do
there's no-
our,
we've got to give more warning of fuss everything.
we
Hold on one
give
second.
public notices of meetings where we're holding workshops, right?
Well, we do it only through the paper.
Only through the
Right.
paper.
It's not-
But if
Well, through the
somebody
paper
doesn't
and
even
Given,
know
you're
your
given,
village
the
email.
public is given a notice through the paper of
I
a workshop.
understand.
Right.
The only thing you can't do at a workshop, you cannot speak.
Yeah.
Right.
You have to sit there
But
and
but this
listen.
way you do learn about the project.
You learn about the
And-
project.
yeah, the
and-
pro-
Nobody sits and stares at everything in the paper if they're raising kids and stuff. So what I'm just saying is, if they were to alert the neighbors closest earlier on in the process, and just say, look, we're gonna be going through something.
Well, that's a point to be made.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
it's
all
a
I'm
valid
saying.
point.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, there's a passive notification, because like the village sends out emails.
We
There's
don't, we give
things
them
that-
a month, usually from the time we have a workshop to a public hearing is about a month.
Well, it's about
It could be 2 weeks between
Could
the
be 2
public
weeks.
hearing,
2
between the
weeks.
workshop and public hearing. So, but even then, I mean, if you're not looking, the only public
Yeah.
notice is given through the paper, unless you're on the village email list.
Exactly, and when we had that whole fight between
Yeah.
the two papers in this
Yeah.
village, a lot of people stopped reading the paper that gave the public
The
notice.
paper of record, yeah.
So,
Well,
you
that's-
know.
Well, so there has to be, but short
I'm
of
just
short of
saying-
going to short of putting those notices in the window
Yeah.
at Village Hall and making everyone walk by it, this is the fact is that is the law of how we notify people.
I know, I'm
Yeah.
just saying that maybe there could be a way where the building department, it goes through the building department. If the building inspector sees this is a substantial addition, just say, okay, when it goes to the HDRB, let's make sure those immediate neighbors know somehow.
That's not his job.
No,
That's not
put
his
it
job.
Well, no,
on,
but what's
Not his
interesting
job.
about.
That would be on the onus of the builder.
Well, what's interesting about that is because the notice goes out around these meetings, because these are legally binding meetings. Workshops before this are not legally binding.
Yeah,
So
this
we-
is an issue,
Oh.
this is good that we're discussing it now, but this is something that
But
could
the
be
building
advised
permit-
in the
a
future,
building
because we
permit
do
is
have
a-
another hearing,
Yeah.
it's 9 o'clock.
It's okay, I just wanted to mention.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate that, I'm sorry to cut you off, it's just a matter of time constraint.
I was just gonna say that these are important issues, and there's a code update committee where this could be addressed.
Yeah.
None of us up here have any more power in changing this than anybody sitting out
Yeah.
there.
The code
And we
update
all
committee
think it
should
could be
look at
better. I mean, we could speak to who should be notified and when, and whether that should be a rule or just done out of you know, neighborliness or whatever, but we're at the end of that process, not the beginning.
Yeah, I just thought it'd make all your jobs better.
Well, I agree that the notification, there should be some form of notification earlier on so somebody knows, because by the time we went to the hearing about the thing, it was like horrible, because you had gone through all of these meetings and changed and spent all this money when maybe your immediate neighbors would have shown up and said, listen, if you do this, none of us are gonna fight you so much.
So this is then an
So-
example of why perhaps you would want earlier notice. So
Yeah.
these are thoughts that we have to submit to a zoning board
Yeah.
to change, not to zoning
Change the
board,
code
but a new
enforcement.
code
Yeah, code
enforcement,
committee.
to change what is currently existing. Give them insight, but we currently have to abide what we're
Can you
supposed to
just
abide
tell me
by.
what happens from here now?
Well, we're gonna discuss between us as a board at the moment openly, you know, what issues we might find. What do you see, Aaron? Any concerns with regard to
Thank you very much, by the way.
the record? Yep, sure.
Are we closing the public hearing? or-
Well, not necessarily at the moment. We're talking out loud before the public hearing is closed.
Pre-closing discussion.
Do we have enough, do we have the full information? Do we need a site plan with the structure on the site, on the survey, or the?
Well, that's what the original, that's what we're always guided by.
I'm not sure how that's not been submitted, though.
It's not been submitted, because here, you just showed us this.
That's a survey. That's a
So
separate
We need a
document than the site plan.
With before and an after. Showing the structure
Chris,
actually
it's-
on it.
Chris, typically we get a survey with with everything existing and a proposed indicator of the addition and where it sits on the
That's what's missing.
survey.
Yeah.
You may even have had that in your prior application.
No, this is the same documentation, just about. Okay, well, I mean, if it's it's specifically a site plan document
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
shows, I mean, like we're.
It's basically with this, with drawn on, overlaid.
Where
Okay.
the addition is,
Lines,
proposed addition
yeah.
is indicated, so that is something that can be shown basically also, not only to us, but to the public to get an idea. We fully understand the points that you raised, but go ahead, let you finish with regards to this.
No, I mean, the way I interpreted the ask in the detailed letter that goes out to say, hey, all the materials that needs to be submitted includes a survey and a site plan. And previously, in previous submitting, this had served as our site plan, because it does indicate sort of the full property line. It doesn't have contouring, but it includes all aspects of the site, of all the property lines, and it includes the documentation specifically asked for, which are where are the setbacks, and how does the building sort of sit. And actually, and in the site plan, you'll note the gray component, the shaded component, is in fact the new part of the building. So this does indicate, from a shading standpoint, where the existing component is, as well as the new footprint.
Yeah, yours is
can't
shaded,
see
but
yours.
ours.
Ours is not.
Oh, no kidding.
Ours are not shaded at all.
So.
How about that? All
Yeah.
right.
But let me mention to you that, see, it might be difficult for somebody who would go back to this file and ask, you know, okay, where's the proposed addition, how does it sit on the survey? And I have to say to you, I don't remember an application that didn't have the survey and the proposed addition with the measurements, you know, indicating where it was gonna sit on the lot, in the survey.
Okay.
So I wasn't here on the 15th, but I don't know what was discussed then. It's not particularly, it's not that
I
easy.
mean, I can speak to the fact that was not there was not a version of this document submitted the first time 2 years ago with that level of documentation. So,
Yeah, I mean, I haven't looked at the old record, so
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
vouch for that. But, I mean, this is difficult from this survey to see where it would actually sit on the survey map. I mean, you would have to, it's just, I don't see how it fits. I mean, I understand the dimensions of the structure and how it's indicated here.
Okay, can I ask this? What information exists on this document that does not exist on that document that you need?
Well,
So here's what I'm worried about, which
Go ahead.
isn't actually the information that we need to make a decision, but it's that we have all the information that the public needs to have their chance
Mhm.
to have their say. So if it's possible that we normally have a site plan with the changes shown on the plan, and we don't have it for this case,
Well,
then
how-
I don't
the-
want
okay.
that to create an opening for somebody
Define
who
site
disagrees
plan
with that
versus
decision.
defining a survey. And does the site plan include
I'm sorry,
documentation normally used in
a
a
survey, what we've had since I've been on the board, which hasn't been that long, has been, in fact, we sent the next applicant back to get a new one. Sorry. Is a survey with then drawn in a way that's clearly visible as to where the changes are going to be.
But measured out, you know, to.
Measure it, right. See, show this is this much footage, this many feet, that many inches, that, you know, whatever. And it would, you could do that here. I mean,
Because density, even though you're not overbuilding on the property, you're under the density, the area coverage. There's an issue of how the house sits on the property. I'm not saying that it's one that would fly or not fly, but is being raised by the public. And so this, for their concerns, this particular item that we usually look for and get becomes a little bit more on point. You know, what it looks like. And it actually, for anybody coming back to the file, will make it pretty clear and easy when they open up that survey and they say, oh, that's where the new structure was being put.
I would assume previous applications are on file for inspection, past inspection.
Oh, yeah, you can go back and look at your old one for sure, yeah. So just make an application to Jeff, okay?
I can and will do so tomorrow.
But let me just ask anybody else. Allison, do you have anything to say with regards to this, or?
no, I mean, I honestly don't recall, you know, that level of detail of the prior application.
The 5 pages that we had,
Yeah.
it's the exact same packet that we submitted.
But it is true that we usually get that, we usually see a site plan, see a survey with the addition marked on it. And that's, so, and I was new when you were here 2 years ago.
Got it.
And ordinarily, we don't get, you know, a lot of public comment with regards to it. So there may have been little or no public comment the last time.
At the ZBA, I'm trying to think.
I mean,
Yeah.
but it becomes more apparent what we, you know, need.
What we
you know,
need when there's public
and
comment,
typically we get it. And I know that we ordinarily do get it. For some reason, I don't know why it wasn't obtained in this case. But it would help. I mean, it's what we look for. Anything else, though?
Well, I can submit one tomorrow.
We have to cover our bases. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah.
We have to be consistent.
I think we should get one.
Okay. In order to get one, we would have to leave the public hearing open.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. And, you know, we could meet on the very next day that we're meeting as a board.
Which is,
2 weeks from today.
okay.
But is there anything else that we're talking about right now? Go ahead.
20th.
The 20th. I'm not here. I'm not here on the 20th, but,
I could be here.
yeah, okay.
Can you be here?
I have not booked my vacation yet, so this,
You're in luck, Chris, then.
Looking like the 24th, my bad.
you know, actually. So the other question that I had involves the notices. This is a new kind of notice that we've gotten back, isn't it? And I think Chris mentioned he did the wrong kind, or did I mishear that?
Well, I got a certified mail. I did not get a certified mail receipt. Yeah, so I did not. I did.
You didn't send it with the green postcard.
Well, no, the green. They are the green bus cards, but it was not with return receipt requested.
Yeah, I got what you mean.
So I do have the green seats, and I did track from all the tracking numbers. All of them were delivered to the addresses they were sent.
That's
So-
all we can ask
so
for.
my-
If they don't pick them up, they don't pick them up.
Right, but my question is that since we're covering our bases, do we want Chris to renotice using the normal method that we always use?
Well, isn't that it?
That is
No,
it.
That's it.
it's the
It's-
receipt, return receipt.
It does not have official USPS return receipt notification, but it does indicate that from a certified mail standpoint, that all 10 of those were received.
By your printout.
Oh, I can pull it up on your computer right now.
Is it
Right.
the postal?
Post it for now.
It's the USPS, and I can pull it up, and I
Well,
can pull it up
you can-
for
we can
public
do it
inspection
from-
right now. And
from-
you can,
from
and
all
you can,
those.
you can
You
do
just-
it, you can,
yeah.
yeah, you can inspect it yourself.
Each of those can be pulled up.
But we're not doing return receipt requests today. My understanding is we're just doing certified mail.
We don't require the return receipt
To be handed.
to be delivered to us.
Did you guys do return receipts?
This is the USPS track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they weren't delivered.
That's a certified mail.
That's all.
But you didn't get a stamp thing
This is
sheet
what
back
we
in the
normally
mail.
get?
Yeah, certified mail.
Yeah,
I thought we got the.
Green postcard comes back, yeah.
Green, yeah, the green postcard, you didn't get green postcards back.
Okay,
I have previous.
my mistake.
Right.
No, not a
But not
mistake.
this
We used to do it that
I
way
can't say.
a few years back. We switched it to certified mail
Yeah.
Okay.
because it was becoming an issue that
It was
people
like-
weren't
it'd be like-
responding.
People weren't picking up their letters.
We had
So
to
it'd be like
keep, we had to
250 or
keep
something
hearings
for-
open for that.
for return receipt.
Alone.
And then
As long as
you
it's
get,
delivered.
you get a card in the mail.
Address.
That was sufficient. But that's a good point you raised. That was an issue that was
We did it
debated.
the last time.
Okay, so my mistake on that,
But what else?
so that's.
Anything else with regards to everything else?
No, I'm good. I just think the only thing I'm concerned about is for the sake of the integrity of the decision making and the fold and the file, we should have this.
Sure.
Yeah.
We'll have it submitted to you tomorrow.
Okay. And then, the next time we're sitting as a board, we'll notify you in advance and post it in the newspaper as well.
Great.
Okay?
Well, shouldn't we just keep the public hearing open and then we?
We'll
don't
keep the
wait
public
for
hearing
this?
open, yeah. So.
5 copies, or actually 8 copies, as per everything else?
Yes, if you could. But anything else in the meanwhile? But with regards to the public comment on a 3D look or anything, I mean, we have, what Chris has provided has been as much with regards to overview of photographs, GPS, side-by-side photographs. That's as much as we've gotten from anybody in the past. So, sorry about the 3D. In fact, it's hard for us to really do it, but what we'll do is when we get the full survey with a site plan on it and indicating, you can sort of come up and take a look at it, and then, take a look from across the street.
I think the other thing we've tried to do, and this happened several years ago, is to try to cut down the cost for people submitting this. We used to get 12, 15 of these. And that's a couple $1,000s. So what we did is we limited it, we cut it down to 6 or 7 to help defray the cost, because again, if they spend a couple $1,000s and don't get the variance, that's money down the drain. So we've tried to cut it down and compact it more for the applicant and for us to go less paperwork. So
And
that's
just as
another
a
reason.
quick point of order.
If someone does a 3D, that's up to them. They take that upon themselves to bring that to us. We don't ask for it. So if someone comes up with a 3D, that's great, but it's not something that, we require. I don't know if that helps to answer your questions.
You're
So
looking
as
at
a-
me or them,
Yeah.
the people who.
Well, I'm just saying.
Really, yeah.
So as a quick point of order, I think
Everybody.
this is a process question, but I think it's specifically in your purview, unlike in a previous conversation. So this is the second time we've had a conversation about this particular application. And in submitting the first set of applications, we come in and we have a meeting, and the purpose of that initial meeting is to ensure that all the documentation is ready to go to public hearing. I think that would have been the forum to find out that there was missing documentation. And the fact that hasn't happened, or that we're hearing.
It was an oversight.
It was an oversight. I wasn't here at that meeting, but at the same point in time, it was an oversight.
It was an
And
oversight.
things happen. We're volunteers, so.
Yeah.
We do have an expertise and understanding in the area, but it was an oversight in this case. I would imagine. We may not have, it might be submitted somewhere inside the office, but this is what we have to
No,
have.
you have everything that was submitted, but it was to the letter submitted to the set of
Right.
rules
No,
that
it
were
was-
given to me with the original application, and sort of, looked over by both Jeff, who is not a volunteer, as well as, Greg and you guys in the previous meeting, and we were given the all clear that all documentation was available. This doesn't seem, I understand we're all volunteers.
But now
I
that
understand
the
that
public
we're
is
volunteers.
raising independently a density question, even though it's not over lot coverage,
The
it's
density-
how the property.
The density
actually-
question was asked in a way that is solved by.
No, it's how the new addition is sitting on the property. That's what they're saying. I mean, that's what's on camera. And, you know, we're responding to that because we're now looking, we've had a question about how a 3D effect would look. So we went looking for the survey, and in this case, it was, a critical question was raised with regards to that. And sometimes it's just not. A lot of times the public doesn't show up.
I mean, I'll go on record and say that the survey is not going to answer that question any more than the documentation you have in front of
It's
you.
not to answer the question.
But it also, it would.
It illustrates it. It illustrates it in a way that it is not absolutely illustrated here. That's the point. I think that if you know, I understand what you're saying, Chris, but the fact is to have the lines drawn to show where the addition is on the survey is just that much clearer. And
So it's a version of this document with survey information.
It's a
Version of this
version
document.
of this document.
it's that document with the lines drawn
With
on it.
measurements. and
Chris,
then
we usually
instructions.
do get this, and just like the issues were raised with regards to earlier notice, or whether there's a view shed ordinance or rule or code. In this case, there was an oversight, perhaps, in not asking you to submit a survey with the site plan going into it. These issues arise. We're not, you know, we're not paid to do what we're doing.
And we're not
come and we
perfect
work
by
hard,
any means.
and we don't mean to delay you, but you did have your approval 2 years ago, too.
Well,
So-
actually, speaking of oversight, the original ordinance that was provided was given a 1-year termination date, not a standard 2-year. So if we're talking about from an oversight standpoint, there's that as well. So I would.
Well, if that was a technical.
There was a technical issue with that particular case, it happened to be raising it, it's immaterial to this particular
Can I ask you a
application.
quick question? When you received that decision, did you look at it right away and say, wait a minute, this should have been 2 years, and then come back?
At the time, I didn't think it mattered, so it was noted, but again, it's immaterial to the fact.
See, things happen. They even happen in courthouses, and people make mistakes.
Sure.
You know, or there's oversight. A lot of people doing that, and those are people who are paid. You know, and here, we're trying to find out, we're listening to the public, and we're trying to find the most appropriate set of documents at this point. There were 2 other applicants who had come back in, prior to this applicant coming up next, that, with the dog run, you remember the dog run?
Yeah.
She comes with a survey with no sighting of where that dog run was gonna be, but with a over 4-foot fence.
Mhm.
And we needed an indication where on the property that would be set. Because if it was in the setback, then she had to go get a survey with a site plan. And was that an issue? or not?
Yeah.
So we showed her how to do it without.
So,
Yeah.
you know, if it's delayed you, our apologies, but at the same point in time, you know, we're 2 years later. So everybody is like falling here and there, and, you know, I'm not trying to lay this on your lap, but, you know, it's just something that we do need at this point, under the circumstances with the public speaking.
I mean, my point in bringing this up is just so that we have all our bases covered. I think we're, you know, I know Elliot is familiar with the property, I'm familiar with the property in the block. So I just want to make sure that we're, you know, we have everything that we normally
Oh,
have.
ducks in the pond. Yeah, because something comes up.
So we can keep the hearing open, we can discuss it at our next meeting and then take a vote.
Yeah.
And from a point of order question, just assume, I mean, what is the standard issue time for an accepted variance?
We'll decide that at the next meeting. It's-
Understood. Regardless of the variance itself, is there a standard sort of, essentially, once the variance is agreed to, for example, we'll use the Kapoors the last time they were here a few weeks ago. What was the time between the date that was agreed to
And the
time
issuance?
of the issuance?
Depending on how fast he writes up writes it up, gives it to the clerk,
The
sends
clerk
you the
gives it
notice,
to the-
gives it to the building inspector, and then it could be 4 days, it could be 5 days.
And in light of the HDRB and the August issue with regards to the contemporariness of the
Yeah, that's my
HDRB
concern.
order, you can make Greg very aware of that.
Yeah, that's my concern.
All right? And simply write him on that.
Okay.
All right? So I recognize that issue there too.
Got it.
So
All right, so I think we're done here. We'll see you guys back in 2 weeks. huh?
thanks.
So-
Sorry about
Thank you
this.
very much. No worries.
Yeah.
So we're leaving
We're leaving the public hearing open on the
Continue
daily.
at our next
Yeah.
meeting.
Continue.
So the
Yeah.
next
Yeah, we have
public hearing
everything
is
here.
July 20th?
Yeah, it'll be Thursday, July 20th, 2 weeks from today.
That's
Okay,
the third.
we will further announce and we'll give you notification, okay? And we'll also.
It'll have to be in the paper, it's gotta be in the paper
Which paper?
10
The
days.
PCNRs.
That's the official,
That's the paper record.
that's the paper of record. That's what.
And do me a favor, check with the village clerk too, if you would. All right, we're gonna put it, you know, as a continued public hearing, but check with the village
Yeah,
clerk.
that's the point, it's a continued public hearing, so it doesn't require additional.
No, there's no
mail.
additional
Right.
mail.
Yes, okay?
And
Continue.
it's 7:30 it starts, right?
Yeah.
Oh, it's, okay.
Yeah, Putnam County is, that's the paper that the village board designated as their official paper.
But it has to be a paid circulation
Exactly, it's
paper,
the
which is
only paper that
why.
qualifies.
That's why it's there.
Oh, okay, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
It's certain, yeah.
Okay, all right, well, thank you very
Thanks so much,
much.
everybody.
Thank you.
Cheers, have a good night.
Thank you. You guys are great.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, make
Thank you
sure-
for the hours.
Make sure everything's back in the packet that you received.
Yeah.
Each of the packets have got